I'm Jake, a 32-year-old guy who thought I'd hit the jackpot with Sarah, my dream girl, at a 4th of July barbecue in 2019. We clicked instantly, laughing over burnt hot dogs, and built a love so solid it felt unbreakable. Until our fairy tale wedding in 2023 unraveled just weeks later. Picture this. I'm grilling $50 0-cent steaks, planning a romantic night, when Sarah walks in, her face pale, and drops a bomb. She's been texting her ex, Ryan, who's supposedly dying of cancer. She says she has to leave me to care for him like it's her destiny. I'm blindsided, my heart racing as our perfect life crumbles. How could my wife of 3 months choose her ex over me? But that's just the start. What if I told you Ryan's cancer was a lie, and Sarah's return hides an even bigger twist? Buckle up. This story of betrayal, lies, and a jaw-dropping secret will leave you questioning everything. What would you do if your world flipped upside down? That 4th of July barbecue in 2019 changed my life. I was in a funk. Work as a project manager had been relentless, and my last breakup left me swearing off dating. I just wanted to stay home with a cold beer and binge Breaking Bad for the 3rd time. But my buddy Mike, the king of never taking no for an answer, practically dragged me to his backyard shindig in suburban Denver. "Come on, Jake, you gotta live a little," he said. I rolled my eyes but showed up, mostly to shut him up. The smell of charcoal and burgers filled the air. Kids were running around with sparklers, and classic rock blared from a Bluetooth speaker. I was nursing a Coors Light, half listening to Mike's stories, when I saw her. Sarah, standing by the dessert table in a red sundress, her dark hair catching the golden hour light. She was laughing at something Mike's girlfriend said, arranging plates of brownies with this effortless charm. I don't believe in love at first sight, but something about her made my chest tighten. I wandered over, pretending to grab a brownie, and we got talking. Turns out we both had a pet peeve for overcooked hot dogs. Random, but it broke the ice. "Who even likes charcoal-flavored meat?" she said, wrinkling her nose. I laughed harder than I had in months. We ended up sitting on lawn chairs, talking for hours as the party faded around us. She was a pediatric nurse, smart as hell, with this quirky sense of humor that had me hooked. We swapped stories about our worst summer jobs, mine at a car wash, hers at a smoothie stand, and bonded over our guilty pleasure, The Bachelor. "Don't judge," she teased, "but I'm team drama every season." By the time fireworks lit up the sky, I knew I didn't want the night to end. I got her number, and 2 weeks later we were on our first date at a local taco joint, splitting a plate of nachos and debating whether pineapple belongs on pizza. It doesn't, for the record. From there, it was like we were glued together. Sarah was everything I didn't know I needed. She wasn't the high-maintenance type chasing Instagram perfection. She'd show up to dates in jeans and a ponytail, looking just as stunning as she did in that sundress. She was funny, the kind of funny that made you snort laugh at her bad puns over breakfast. But more than that, we just got each other. We'd spend weekends hiking in the Rockies, dreaming about buying a fixer-upper in the suburbs someday. "I want a porch swing and a big backyard for our kids to run around in," she'd say, her eyes lighting up. Kids. Yeah, we talked about that early on. She wanted to name our future daughter Lily, after her grandma, and I was all in. We binged The Bachelor on rainy nights, laughing at the over-the-top drama while eating takeout pizza. Our fights were rare, and when they happened, we talked them out like adults. No screaming matches or silent treatments. My buddies, especially Mike, gave me crap for being whipped, but I didn't care. Sarah made me want to be a better man, as cheesy as that sounds. By 2022, I knew she was the one. I planned the proposal during a hike in Colorado's Red Rocks Park. I'd been a nervous wreck all week, checking my pocket every 5 minutes to make sure the ring was still there. The trail was steep, the air crisp, and Sarah was ahead of me, pointing out a hawk circling above. At the lookout point, with the sun dipping below the mountains, I got down on one knee. My hands were shaking so bad I nearly dropped the ring into a crevice. "Sarah, you're my best friend, my home. Will you marry me?" I stammered. She burst into tears, laughing and nodding, and we stood there hugging as the sky turned pink. It felt like the start of forever. We dove into wedding planning right away. Sarah had her heart set on a historic vineyard an hour outside Denver with rolling hills and fairy tale vibes. It cost a small fortune. Seriously, why are weddings so expensive? But seeing her face light up when we booked it was worth every penny. The planning was a whirlwind, picking out flowers, tasting cakes, arguing over whether to have a DJ or a live band. We went with the band. Sarah was in her element, sketching table settings and sending me Pinterest boards at 2 a.m. I loved her passion, even if I didn't get why napkins needed to be eucalyptus green. As the big day got closer, we'd lie in bed, talking about our future. Trips to Hawaii, maybe a dog. We got Buddy, a golden retriever, a year before the wedding, and starting a family in a few years. Everything felt so right. The wedding day in June 2023 was straight out of a movie. The vineyard was decked out with twinkle lights and wildflowers, the summer air warm and sweet. Sarah walked down the aisle in a lace dress that made my heart stop. I'm not a crier, but I had to blink hard to keep it together. We said our vows under an arch of roses, promising to love and support each other through everything. That night, as we danced to Can't Help Falling in Love, I looked at Sarah, laughing with her bridesmaids, and thought, this is it. This is my life. We honeymooned in Maui, swimming in turquoise waters and making plans over Mai Tais. We talked about saving for a house, maybe in a quiet suburb with good schools. Sarah even joked about teaching Lily to surf someday. I went to bed every night on that trip thinking I was the luckiest guy alive. Looking back, those moments feel like a dream, one I didn't know was about to turn into a nightmare. I had no idea that 3 weeks later my world would come crashing down over a dinner I'd spent hours planning. But that's the thing about love. It blinds you to the cracks until they're too big to ignore. Those first few weeks after our Maui honeymoon felt like a dream that wouldn't end. Sarah and I were back in Denver, settling into married life, still buzzing from the wedding. I'd catch myself grinning at random moments, thinking about our future, buying a house, maybe taking Buddy for walks in a new neighborhood. But that dream shattered one Friday night in July 2023, just 3 weeks after we got back. I'd decided to surprise Sarah with a fancy dinner. She'd been pulling double shifts at the hospital, looking exhausted but still radiant. I splurged on 2 prime rib steaks from a high-end butcher downtown. $50, 0 cents a pop, but worth it to see her smile. I set the table with candles, put on a playlist of her favorite John Mayer songs, and even chilled a bottle of her go-to Pinot Grigio. I was practically patting myself on the back, imagining her walking in and melting into my arms after a long day. She texted around 5 p.m. that she'd be late, grabbing coffee with her best friend Chloe at their usual spot. I wasn't thrilled. Chloe's always been a drama magnet, the kind who posts "live your truth" quotes on Instagram while stirring up trouble, but I shrugged it off. Sarah deserved a break, and I trusted her completely. Or so I thought. By 8:30 p.m., the steaks were cold, the candles were dripping wax, and I was starving, pacing the kitchen with Buddy whining at my feet. I texted Sarah, trying to keep it light. "Steaks are ready when you are, babe." No reply. My annoyance started creeping up, but I told myself she was just caught up in girl talk. When she finally walked in at 9:15, my stomach dropped. Her face had that tight, serious look she gets when she has to tell parents bad news at work. She didn't even glance at the table I'd set up, just dropped her purse on the counter and said, "Jake, we need to talk." Her voice was flat, almost cold, and it sent a chill down my spine. My first thought was wild. Maybe she was pregnant? We'd talked about waiting a couple of years, but accidents happen, right? I could have handled that. I'd have been thrilled even. But what she said next felt like a sledgehammer to the chest. Sarah sat at the kitchen island, avoiding my eyes, and started talking about Ryan, her ex from college. I knew about Ryan. They'd dated for 3 years before he moved to Seattle for a tech job, and they split because neither wanted long distance. She didn't talk about him much, just mentioned him in passing, like an old chapter she'd closed. But now she was saying Chloe had run into Ryan's cousin at a yoga class earlier that week. Apparently, Ryan had stage 4 pancreatic cancer, with maybe 6 months to live. Sarah's voice cracked as she said she'd been texting him since she found out. She slid her phone across the counter, showing me their messages. Dozens of them, going back days. They weren't flirty, thank God, but they were heavy. Ryan talking about his fear of dying. Sarah reminiscing about their college days. Lines like, "You were such a big part of my life," and "I never stopped caring." My hands shook as I scrolled. While I was out buying fancy steaks, my wife was having heart-to-hearts with her ex. I felt like I'd been punched. Then came the real blow. Sarah said Ryan's dying wish was to spend his final months with her. She looked at me, tears welling up, and said she felt like she had to do this, like it was some kind of cosmic test. "He's got no one else, Jake," she kept saying. "His family's all in Boston." I just sat there, staring at the cold steaks, my mind racing. Chloe, of course, was all in on this insanity. She'd told Sarah it was fate that she'd learned about Ryan's cancer, that she'd regret not being there for him. Apparently, Chloe had even set up a chance meeting at their old coffee shop, pushing Sarah to reconnect. I tried to stay calm, but my voice was shaking as I asked, "What about me? Your husband? The guy you just vowed to spend your life with?" Sarah started crying harder, saying it wasn't about love, that this was bigger than us. Bigger than us? That phrase hit like a knife. I asked if she still had feelings for Ryan. She swore she didn't, but her tears weren't convincing me. They just made me angrier. I pushed back, asking if she'd seen any medical records, talked to his doctors, anything to verify this so-called cancer. She got defensive, snapping, "The Ryan I knew wouldn't lie about something like this." That line, the Ryan she knew, echoed in my head like she was clinging to some version of him I couldn't compete with. She even had the nerve to suggest we take a break, while she helped Ryan through his final journey. A break? In our marriage? I laughed, but it wasn't funny. "There's no pause button on vows, Sarah," I said, my voice louder than I meant. "You don't get to put me on hold while you play nurse for your ex." The argument went in circles for hours. She kept talking about karma, about doing the right thing, while I tried to make her see how insane this was. At one point she said, "If you love me, you'll understand why I need to do this." That felt like a slap. Manipulation. Plain and simple. By 2 a.m. I was done. My head was pounding. My heart felt like it was being ripped apart. I looked at her and said, "You need to choose right now. Me or Ryan. If you walk out that door, we're done. No breaks, no coming back." She stared at me, her face a mix of shock and disappointment, like I was the one being unreasonable. "Jake, life isn't that black and white," she said, grabbing her purse. "I need time to think." She walked out, and the sound of the door slamming felt like a gunshot. I sat in the kitchen, staring at those stupid steaks, Buddy curled up at my feet. I kept checking my phone, hoping she'd text, saying she'd come to her senses, but it stayed silent. That night, I didn't sleep. I just sat there, replaying every moment of our relationship, wondering how we went from planning a life together to this. How could the woman I loved, the one I'd married just weeks ago, choose her ex over me? And what the hell was I supposed to do now? The sound of the door slamming behind Sarah that night echoed in my head for days. I sat in our kitchen, the cold steak still on the counter, Buddy's big brown eyes watching me like he knew something was wrong. I kept waiting for a text, a call, anything to say she'd realized how crazy this was. But my phone stayed silent, and the reality hit me like a ton of bricks. My wife of 3 months had chosen her supposedly dying ex, Ryan, over our marriage. The house felt too big, too empty, and I was a wreck. Couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, just kept replaying that fight, wondering what I'd missed. How did we go from dancing under vineyard lights to this? I felt like I was drowning, but I wasn't about to let Sarah or Chloe's cosmic nonsense ruin me. I had to keep moving, even if every step hurt. A few days after Sarah left, she was still at Chloe's, barely responding to my texts. I sent a couple, trying to keep it civil, "Can we talk about this?" but got one-word replies or nothing at all. It was like she'd already checked out of our marriage. My buddy Mike, the one who'd hosted that 4th of July barbecue where I met Sarah, came over with a pizza and a six-pack when I told him what happened. "Man, this is wild," he said, shaking his head. "Sarah? The same Sarah we double-dated with in Vegas? No way." He couldn't believe it either, and hearing that made me feel less crazy. We'd all hung out so much, game nights, ski trips, barbecues, and Sarah had always seemed so grounded. Mike stayed late, trying to cheer me up, but I could tell he was as floored as I was. Buddy, our golden retriever, became my shadow, curling up next to me on the couch as I stared at the TV, not really watching. About a week later, I got a text from Sarah that felt like a punch to the gut. It was a novel-length message about how she'd done a lot of thinking and decided to move in with Ryan to help him through his final months. She actually wrote, "I hope you can find it in your heart to understand, and maybe we can revisit our relationship later." Revisit? Like I was some backup plan she'd circle back to when her ex was done dying? I was furious, humiliated, and done. The next day, an email from her lawyer landed in my inbox, not even a phone call, saying she wanted a divorce and hoped we could keep it amicable. Amicable? After she'd blown up our life? I was sitting at my desk at work when I read it, and I had to tell my boss I was sick and go home. My stomach churned, my head spun, I felt like the ground had disappeared beneath me. Some of our friends actually took her side, which cut deeper than I expected. My friend Lisa, who I thought was tight with me, texted that I should be proud of Sarah for being so selfless. Proud? That my wife ditched me for her ex? I couldn't wrap my head around it. At a dinner with our couple friends, they tried to get me to see her perspective, saying, "How would you feel if you could comfort someone in their final days but didn't?" I shot back, "Would you leave your spouse for a dying ex?" The table went quiet and I knew I'd hit a nerve. Even Sarah's brother Tom, who'd always been cool with me, posted vague Facebook statuses about supporting tough choices. It was like everyone was drinking Chloe's spiritual Kool-Aid. I felt like the bad guy for expecting my wife to honor our vows. The betrayal wasn't just Sarah's. It was the friends who made me question my own sanity. I wasn't about to roll over. My brother recommended a lawyer, a real shark who didn't mess around. Sarah's lawyer suggested I move out of our house, where I'd paid 70% of the down payment. No way. I told them she could buy me out if she wanted it, but I wasn't budging. Sarah seemed shocked I wasn't playing nice, like she expected me to just hand her everything. The day she came to get her stuff was brutal. Chloe tagged along, of course, throwing me dirty looks like I was the villain. They spent 3 hours packing Sarah's clothes, books, and knickknacks, Chloe huffing every time she passed me. I sat on the couch, sipping a beer, watching football, refusing to help. Then Sarah tried to take Buddy. That's when I lost it. "No way in hell you're taking my dog to live with your dying boyfriend!" She cried, saying she needed emotional support. I laughed, bitterly, and reminded her Buddy was registered in my name and I'd paid every vet bill. She left without him, and I felt a small victory amidst the chaos. The divorce was quick, finalized in a few weeks since we hadn't been married long. Sarah didn't fight me on the finances, probably out of guilt. She even signed over her share of the house without a fuss, which surprised her lawyer. I think she just wanted to move on to her noble mission with Ryan. Once she was gone, the house felt like a ghost town. I threw out her leftover stuff, old sweaters, half-used candles, trying to erase her from my space. My mom kept pushing me to date, setting me up with daughters of her church friends. "Thanks, Mom, but I'm good," I'd say, dodging her matchmaking. My buddies tried dragging me to bars, saying I needed to get back out there, but explaining my situation to some random woman. Yeah, my wife left me for her dying ex. Felt exhausting. I wasn't ready. Instead, I threw myself into work. My boss was a champ, letting me take on extra projects to keep my mind busy. I was a project manager at a construction firm, and the overtime meant more money, which was a silver lining. I started Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu at a local gym too, channeling my anger into sparring sessions. It was brutal but cathartic, nothing like choking out a heavy bag to feel alive again. Buddy was my lifeline. He forced me to stick to a routine, morning walks, evening feedings, his goofy grin keeping me grounded. I'd sit on the couch with him, binging Stranger Things at 2 a.m., trying not to check my phone for messages that never came. Social media was the worst. Sarah didn't post much, but Chloe's cryptic "follow your heart" quotes made my blood boil. Mutual friends shared photos of Sarah at brunches, acting like everything was fine. I blocked them both, along with a few others who took her side. Losing those friends hurt almost as much as the divorce. Slowly, I started to feel like myself again. I got a promotion at work, bought a Jeep Wrangler I'd always wanted, and got in the best shape of my life. Jiu-jitsu was paying off. I even won a local tournament, which felt like a middle finger to the chaos. I wasn't healed, but I was moving forward, one day at a time. Little did I know, Sarah was about to crash back into my life with a secret that would turn everything upside down again. Life was starting to feel manageable again after the divorce. I'd carved out a new rhythm: work, jiu-jitsu, walks with Buddy, and the occasional beer with Mike. The promotion at work was a boost, and my new Jeep Wrangler was my pride and joy, perfect for weekend drives into the Rockies. I'd even started dipping my toes into dating, nothing serious, just coffee here and there with women from the gym. One of them, Lauren, a yoga instructor with a no BS attitude, was different. We'd been on a few dates, and I liked her straightforward vibe. No spiritual mumbo-jumbo, just real talk, and a shared love for bad action movies. I wasn't ready to call it love, but it felt like a step towards something good. The scars from Sarah's betrayal were still there, but I was learning to live with them. Then, out of nowhere, Sarah blew up my phone on a random Tuesday afternoon in November 2023. Calls, texts, voicemails. Her name flashing on my screen felt like a ghost from the past. I ignored it at first, figuring she was just stirring up more drama. Why would I want to hear from the woman who ditched me for her dying ex, Ryan? But when Tom, Sarah's brother, texted me saying, "You need to hear her out, man," I got curious. Tom had apologized to me months ago for Sarah's stunt, so his message carried weight. Something big had to be up. I answered one of Sarah's calls during my lunch break, sitting in my Jeep outside the office. She was hysterical, sobbing so hard I could barely make out her words. At first I thought Ryan must have died. Part of me felt a grim satisfaction at the idea. Harsh, I know, but after everything, I wasn't feeling charitable. But what she said next was so wild I almost dropped my phone. Ryan wasn't dying. He'd never had cancer at all. The whole thing, stage 4 pancreatic cancer, the 6-month prognosis, was a lie. He'd faked it to win her back after seeing our wedding photos on Instagram. Let that sink in. This guy fabricated a terminal illness, forged medical records, with help from a buddy who worked at a hospital, and spun a sob story to lure Sarah away from our marriage. I sat there, stunned, as Sarah spilled the details. She'd run into Ryan's sister at Target, just catching up, and mentioned his treatment. His sister looked confused, saying, "What treatment? Ryan's fine." Sarah confronted him that night, and the jerk just laughed. "Yeah, I made it up," he said, "but it worked, didn't it?" Then he dropped the real bomb. He'd been dating his co-worker Kate for 6 months and was planning to move to Seattle with her for a new job. He looked Sarah in the eye and said, "I needed you then, but I'm in a better place now. You should move on." I couldn't help it. I started laughing, a full-on can't-breathe belly laugh. Not because it was funny, but because it was so absurd. This guy had blown up my marriage with the most unhinged lie I'd ever heard, then tossed Sarah aside like she was nothing. It was like something out of a bad Lifetime movie. Sarah was crying, saying she'd ruined everything for a lie, that she'd never forgive herself. "I threw away our marriage, Jake," she sobbed. "I was so stupid. I didn't know what to say, so I just went with, 'Yup,' and hung up." My head was spinning, but part of me felt a twisted sense of vindication. She'd made her choice, and now she was stuck with the consequences. I drove to the gym, rolled with my jiu-jitsu crew, and tried to shake it off, but Sarah wasn't done. My phone kept buzzing with texts, long, rambling apologies about how this was a sign we were meant to work things out. She was still on that universe nonsense, I guess. I didn't respond. I wasn't about to let her drag me back into her chaos. The next day, Sarah went full nuclear. She posted the whole story on Instagram, tagging Ryan, Kate, even his coworkers. It was a train wreck in real time, screenshots of their texts, details about the fake medical records, everything. The comment section exploded. "Kate, Ryan's girlfriend found out through the post and dumped him on the spot. His company caught wind of his fake medical leave and fired him. His family was mortified. His sister commented, "I can't believe he lied to us all." Ryan's life imploded in less than 24 hours, and I won't lie, it felt like karma had delivered a perfect knockout. I almost felt bad for him. Almost. But Sarah's post didn't fix what she'd done. It just made her look desperate, airing her dirty laundry for likes and sympathy. She didn't stop there. Sarah started showing up at my work with my favorite cold brew, like she thought coffee could erase the past. She sent emails to my work account, long apologies about how she'd never stop loving me. She even tried calling my mom, who shut her down fast. Mom never forgave her for leaving me. After a week of this, I was fed up. I agreed to meet her at a busy diner downtown, figuring she couldn't make a scene in public. Big mistake. She walked in, looking like she hadn't slept in days, wearing my old University of Colorado hoodie she must have kept after moving out. Weird move, Sarah. She started crying the second she saw me, saying, "You look good, Jake. Been hitting the gym?" I smirked and said, "Yeah, getting dumped is great motivation." She didn't like that, but I wasn't there to make her feel better. Sarah launched into a rehearsed speech, how sorry she was, how she thought of me every day, how she still had photos of us on her phone. Then she tried to spin it, saying Ryan's lie proved how loyal she could be, that she'd sacrificed everything for someone she cared about. I nearly spit out my coffee. "Loyal," I said. "You left your husband without even checking if Ryan's story was real. You didn't talk to his doctors, his family, nothing." She got defensive, saying she couldn't believe I was questioning her intentions. Then she pulled out the big one. "Maybe this was meant to be, Jake. Ryan's lie showed how strong our love is. We can start over." I was done. "You're only here because Ryan's a fraud," I said, leaning forward. "I'm not your backup plan." She started crying harder, doing that thing where she tilts her head back to hide it. It used to break my heart. Now it just annoyed me. She begged for couples counseling, said she still wore her wedding ring sometimes. I laughed, not cruelly, just at the sheer absurdity. "Sarah, you need therapy, not me," I said. "Figure out why you threw away our marriage for a liar." I got up, paid for my coffee, and left. For the first time in months, I felt free, like I'd finally closed the door on her. But life, as I'd learned soon enough, had one more curveball waiting. Walking away from Sarah at that diner felt like shedding a weight I'd carried for months. I was done with her apologies, her cosmic nonsense, and the chaos she'd brought into my life. Ryan's implosion was poetic justice, and I was ready to move forward. Lauren and I were getting closer. She was easy to talk to, loved cheesy 88's action flicks, and didn't believe in the universe's plan. Things were casual, but heading somewhere good. I'd landed a solid promotion, my Jeep was my weekend escape, and Buddy kept me grounded with his goofy grin. Life was good, or at least getting there. Then, 4 months after the diner showdown in March 2024, Sarah showed up at my door unannounced. I opened it, expecting a delivery, and froze. She looked different, pale, nervous, and unmistakably pregnant. My first thought was Ryan, that he'd knocked her up before skipping town with Kate, but the envelope in her shaking hands told a different story, one that turned my world upside down again. Sarah's voice trembled as she said she was 14 weeks along. I did the math. July 2023, right before she left me for Ryan. She handed me a paternity test, one of those early blood tests, showing a 99.9% chance the baby was mine. I stood in my kitchen, clutching the paper, as Buddy nudged my leg, sensing my panic. Sarah said she'd found out after Ryan's lie unraveled, going to doctor's appointments alone, too scared to tell me until now. "I know this changes everything, Jake," she said, tears streaming. "Maybe it's a sign we should try again." My head spun. Part of me was thrilled. I'd always wanted to be a dad, and Sarah and I had dreamed of naming our kid Lily. But the other part? Furious. She'd left me for a liar without a second thought, and now she was back, waving a baby like a reset button. Did a kid erase her betrayal? I didn't know what to feel. I canceled dinner with Lauren that night, texting that I was sick. I couldn't face her, not with this bombshell. Sitting on the couch with Buddy, I felt like I was in a bad dream. I wanted to be there for my kid, no question about that. But co-parenting with Sarah, the woman who'd shattered my trust, that felt like signing up for 18 years of drama, and Lauren, she didn't deserve to be dragged into this mess. We'd only been dating a few weeks, and dropping my ex-wife as pregnant with my kid on her felt like a lot. I imagined her face, her easy laugh, fading as I explained. Would she bolt? I wouldn't blame her. Sarah kept texting, saying we should talk, that a baby changes everything. But does it? Does it undo the nights I spent staring at my phone, waiting for her to choose me? Does it erase the fact that she's only here because Ryan's scam fell apart? Buddy dropped his squeaky toy in my lap like he knew I was spiraling. I hugged him, trying to sort through the mess in my head. I'm excited about being a dad, but terrified of being tied to Sarah. How do I co-parent with someone who broke me? How do I tell Lauren without scaring her off? And how do I make sure my kid grows up with a dad who's present, not caught in their mom's chaos? I'm stuck, torn between a future I want and a past I can't escape. What would you do?